UCF Jaguar here with GenJag.com, and I am back in Orlando after traveling up to Jacksonville to attend 2 days of Jaguar Buccaneers joint training camp practices. It was an awesome time, but for now we are going to discuss what I took away from the last couple days. So let's get it. So for those of you that have never been to the Jaguars practice fields, the way it's set up is that the bleachers, there's a pair of bleachers set up here, and then there's one field, there's field 2, and then there's field 3. And when they break away and do 11-on-11 drills, they run simultaneously on fields 1 and field 2. So say on the field closest to us, it'll be the Jaguars offense versus the Buccaneers defense. Then on the other side, it'll be the Buccaneers offense versus the Jaguars defense. So day 1, the defense was closest to us, and then day 2, the offense was closest to us. So I had most of my eyes day 1 on the defense, and then day 2 on the offense. So when I discuss, I'm going to go ahead and go into day 1 and kind of give you my takeaways that I saw on the defense. And then after that, I'll do kind of a day 2 thing where I can show you guys what I felt on the Jaguars 11-on-11s when it was on the offensive side of the ball. So we'll start off and talk about the defense. When I made my what to watch for when it comes to the Jaguars Buccaneers joint training camp practices, I thought it was going to be fascinating to see the matchups with, Mike Evans, with Deshaun Jackson against, Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye and that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, Jalen Ramsey, AJ Boye, and Colvin were all out, so we were stuck with our backup secondary. And then one person that you've been hearing all throughout training camp is cornerback Tyler Patman. And I got to see him for the first time, and man, he was really impressive. Day 1, he was able to get a pick in one-on-ones, and then he was able to add a second pick on the day when 11-on-11s happened when he was playing up against Jameis Winston. And on top of getting those interceptions, he had a lot of pass breakups. I mean, he was getting in there. Then he was really the only person that was able to remotely cover Mike Evans after Brian Dixon was just getting roasted by him. Now, when you move down to the trenches and go to the defensive line, defensive end to be specific, we'll talk about Dante Fowler Jr. Now, the big matchup I was going to watch was Dante Fowler Jr. up against DeMar Dotson, because I remember last year there was so much more momentum for Dante Fowler going on, before they did these joint practices with the Buccaneers. And then DeMar Dotson really took him back down to earth as he pretty much hammered him. But this year, this year's practices, I saw Dante play a lot better. Now, he had his share of losses, but then also he had his share of, pretty good plays. Specifically in one-on-ones, it started out where DeMar Dotson pretty much picked him up and dropped him. But Dante Fowler ran back, and after that he was actually able to bend the edge and use his speed to get around him, which was something that we did not see last year. So also, DeMar Dotson gave Dante Fowler a little bit of respect after the practices, basically saying that he's a lot different from last year. Last year was jawing off a lot more, but this time he was doing his thing, kind of being more quiet, more focusing on himself. So that's good to see out of Dante Fowler, especially with his questionable maturity kind of issues. So that definitely gives him a little bit of momentum going into the rest of the preseason, into the regular season, because he's pretty much having a fairly good preseason and training camp. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on. And then also Paul Posluszny continued to take middle linebacker reps in the base 4-3 defense. And then, in the nickel, Telvin Smith and Myles Jack are playing with each other. And, that's kind of an interesting thing that's going to be going on. I never really heard of something like this. And it's also kind of interesting how usually the middle linebacker is the person that has the, defensive coordinator in their ear when it comes to their helmet. They have them electronically kind of calling in, making the plays. But Myles Jack is still going to be wearing that helmet. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of communication is going on with that. But this is something that's you pretty much keep your eye on over the next few weeks. But now we'll move on to day 2. where I pretty much paid more attention to the offense. Bortles today was very, very average. A lot of his completions were pretty much a bunch of short passes. He had some pretty decent intermediary passes, but the good thing about him is that he wasn't turning the ball over. I mean, but he had a beautiful pass to Allen Robinson down the sidelines, but he also missed a few plays, specifically what would have been a would-be touchdown, a definite touchdown to Keelan Cole down the middle of the field. So, it's good he doesn't throw picks on those, but you really want to see him hit that home run ball, but and make those deep throws. But moving on from him, the wide receivers. Now, Allen Robinson, he stands out pretty much every practice. He's always making these grabs that not really many receivers would be able to make, pretty much high point them and stuff like that. Also, Hearns had a pretty nasty juke move on this dude in one-on-ones. That was really cool to see out of Hearns. But also, I want to touch on Keelan Cole a little bit. Now, the only really thing I've seen from him was during his preseason game, because I haven't really gotten to look at him in these training camp practices, but I really like him, man. I mean, this dude is just a smooth and fluid runner. He's got great hands. He just really looks like he belongs out there. From all I hear, he's doing better than Rashad Green and stuff like that. And so, I mean, he's going to make... before the season, I had the Jaguars taking 5 receivers, with Aurelius Ben being that 5th guy. But he's going to make a hard case to really be on the team at that 6th spot, especially if he can show some more in special teams and maybe even punt return. And then to note on the Marquise Lee injury, as I was leaving practice today, I actually saw him walking around, and he's not in a boot, and it doesn't look like he's limping too much, so that's definitely a positive sign out of that. And we'll end off by talking about the offensive line a little bit. Now, the offensive line actually got a pretty good amount of push. I mean, Cam Robinson was playing well, and one person I was really impressed with was Patrick Omameh. He came off a strong first preseason game, and this week in practice, I mean, this is a guy that I was very, very hard on and pretty much wrote off all offseason, but when he went up against Gerald McCoy, one of the top 5'6", 3 techniques in the NFL, he held his own, and he was able to do pretty well, so that's definitely encouraging coming out of Patrick Omameh, so definitely keep your eyes on him going forward. But also just a few notes from these practices. I noticed the difference between this regime and the last regime is that this coaching staff is loud. Joe DeCamillis, the Jaguar special teams coach, you hear him all over the place. And you hear Doug Marrone a lot too, which I overheard him saying this today. So I really love Marrone. The dude's a badass coach. Exactly what the Jaguars need to try to bring in this tough mentality. Also, we were running some funky special teams things today. We were practicing safety punts. We were practicing where the punter gets the ball and runs back, where you're in a situation where it's good to take a safety to help burn some time off the clock. And they're also trying some offside kicks. I know my buddy Jordan from Gen Jag said that they've been doing all kinds of weird special teams things all throughout the all throughout the training camp. So that's, one thing that the coaches brought in was they want to have a great special teams, which is why they reached out and specifically sought after Joe DeCamillis to be the special teams coach. So, that was definitely interesting to see. But also, last little note, I noticed that the Jags were on the field for an extra 15 minutes after the Bucs left the fields, and they were basically going through stretches and that kind of stuff. So, also one thing I noticed is that when I was paying attention to basically the teams as a whole, it seems like the Jaguars had a lot more hustle when it comes to getting, from one drill to another. When they were all kind of together, it seemed like the Jaguars were always running, and then a lot of the Bucs were kind of walking and kind of a little bit slower. Now, it doesn't mean that this is going to make the Jaguars a better team than the Bucs, but it's just interesting to see what a few weeks under Doug Marrone have done, because you definitely know Gus Bradley, it would have been, that same lazy kind of way that the Bucs kind of looked. But with all that said, that's all I got. Now, I got a ton of footage over the last 2 training camps, so I want to edit those around a little bit and be able to release a really cool video for you guys. I don't have any specific time frame when that's going to be done. Hopefully, maybe this weekend. But also, I'm also going to be going live again before the next Thursday night football game, the Jaguars home opener, preseason home opener against the Tampa Bay Bucs. So definitely come back to my channel. I really enjoyed the last live stream, and you know, it's Q&A. It's going to be led by y'all, so it's going to be a fun time. But that's all I got, man. This is UCF Jaguar with GenJag.com. I'm out.